Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to kick off today's presentation with our topic, practical work. On this first slide, you'll see the title Practical Work, which sets the stage for what we'll be exploring. We'll be discussing hands-on approaches, real-world applications, and key strategies to make your practical work more effective. Over the next few slides, I'll guide you through the main concepts and tips to help you succeed. Let's get started. Today, I want to talk about the concept of social groups and social control. These are fundamental to understanding how societies function and maintain order. A social group is essentially a collection of people who interact with one another, share similar interests or characteristics, and recognize themselves as part of the group. Think of groups like families, peer groups, or even communities. These shape our identities and influence our behaviors. Now, social control refers to the mechanisms that regulate individual and group behavior to ensure societal stability. It can be formal, like laws and regulations, or informal, such as social norms and expectations. These controls help us conform to accepted standards and maintain order within the society. Connecting this to the overall theme, understanding how social groups function and how social control operates gives us insight into the fabric of society. It shows us how order is maintained, how identities are shaped, and how social cohesion is achieved. Both concepts are crucial for grasping the bigger picture of social dynamics and human behavior. A social group is essentially a collection of people who come together because they interact with each other, either directly or indirectly. What this means is that they communicate, share ideas, or coordinate in some way. And importantly, they work together towards common goals. So whether it's a small team at work or a community organization, these groups are built on connection and shared purpose. Recognizing how these groups form and function helps us understand the bigger picture of social dynamics and how individuals influence and are influenced by their social environment. Let's take a closer look at these two pictures and see if we can spot the differences. This exercise might seem simple, but it actually highlights an important skill: attention to detail. By carefully examining each element, we can notice subtle changes that might otherwise go unnoticed. This is a great way to reinforce the idea that small differences can have a big impact, especially when we're analyzing data or making decisions. Throughout this presentation, we'll see how paying close attention to details helps us make more informed and accurate choices. So, as you compare these images, think about how this skill applies to the bigger picture we're exploring together. Let's take a closer look at the features of a family. First, a family is typically a small group, which makes it easier to develop close bonds and a sense of intimacy. It's made up of familiar people, those we know well and with whom we share our lives. Because of this familiarity, there's a common way of acting, a shared understanding that guides our behaviors and interactions. This shared way of acting is crucial because it influences our personality development. The family environment shapes who we are and how we see the world. Another key feature is that families exist to satisfy the needs of their members. Whether it's emotional support, security, or guidance, families serve to meet these fundamental needs. Additionally, there's an elevated sense of group consciousness within families. We often think of ourselves not just as individuals, but as part of a larger unit, which fosters a sense of belonging and collective identity. All these features highlight how families are foundational to personal growth and social stability, tying into the overall theme of understanding human relationships and social structures. Let's take a look at the classification of social groups. Social groups are categorized based on several factors, such as how strong the membership is, the mutual relationships among members, how they work together, and their efforts to achieve common goals. This helps us understand the nature and dynamics of different groups within society. Generally, social groups are divided into two main categories: primary groups and secondary groups. Primary groups are characterized by close, personal, and emotional relationships. Think of family and close friends. These are the groups where we share deep bonds and face-to-face interactions. On the other hand, secondary groups tend to be more formal and impersonal, often centered around specific tasks or objectives. Examples include colleagues at work or members of a club where interactions are more goal-oriented and less emotionally driven. Understanding these classifications is crucial because they help us see how different social groups influence our behavior, attitudes, and social structure as a whole. This classification ties directly into how society functions and how individuals navigate their social environments. Now, let's talk about the primary group. A primary group is typically made up of a small number of people who share close, personal relationships. These groups are characterized by face-to-face interaction and mutual cooperation, which helps build strong bonds. One key feature of a primary group is that members really know each other well. This familiarity creates a sense of trust and intimacy. The main goal of these groups is the welfare of their members, meaning they support each other through good times and bad. Some common examples include friends, where intimacy is a core component, neighbors, who often interact regularly, family members who share the strongest bonds, classmates with ongoing communication, and peer groups or church members, where mutual support and cooperation are essential. Overall, primary groups are fundamental because they shape our social identity and provide emotional security. They are the foundation of our social life, emphasizing personal relationships and continuous interaction. Secondary groups typically have more members than primary groups, and that's an important distinction. These groups usually have formal relationships among members, which means there are clear rules or structures that guide how they interact. They are formed primarily to meet common needs, things like achieving goals, sharing interests, or pursuing collective objectives. At the same time, personal usefulness plays a big role in why people join these groups. For example, being part of a trade union or a political party can offer benefits that help individuals in their personal or professional lives. It's also interesting to note that some secondary groups might cease to exist once their specific objectives are achieved. For instance, a project team might disband once the task is completed. Some common examples of secondary groups include political parties, clubs, trade unions, and even sports teams like football teams. These groups are more structured and goal-oriented compared to primary groups, which tend to be more about personal connections and emotional bonds. Understanding secondary groups helps us see how larger, more organized groups function within society to fulfill specific needs, all while connecting to the broader theme of social organization and human interaction. Let's take a closer look at the differences between primary and secondary groups. First, you'll notice that the members of these groups are often widespread, meaning they are dispersed over a larger area or network. When it comes to primary groups, such as family or close friends, they tend to be small in size, which allows for more intimate interactions. In primary groups, cooperation with fellow members is usually direct, meaning you interact face-to-face or through personal communication. On the other hand, secondary groups, like colleagues or larger organizational teams, often involve cooperation that is more formal and structured. This cooperation is usually regulated by a set of formal rules and procedures, making it more organized and sometimes impersonal. Now, primary groups are characterized by informal structures, where relationships are personal and based on emotional ties. These are the groups where you develop deep, direct, and personal relationships. Conversely, secondary groups tend to have more impersonal relationships, where interactions are based on roles and tasks rather than personal bonds. Understanding these distinctions helps us see how different group dynamics influence our social interactions and organizational behavior. This contrast really highlights how the nature of the relationships and the structure of the group shape our experiences within them. Thank you for your attention. Now, let's talk about the influence and use of social groups in our lives. Social groups play a really significant role in shaping who we are and how we interact with others. One of the main uses of social groups is to promote companionship, helping us feel connected and supported. They also help us promote social values, which guide our behavior and interactions within society. Additionally, social groups train us in behavior patterns, teaching us what is acceptable and expected. They are essential in ensuring cooperation among members, which keeps our communities functioning smoothly. Lastly, social groups promote coexistence, encouraging us to live peacefully and harmoniously with others. Understanding these points highlights how integral social groups are to our personal development and societal harmony. Thank you for your attention.